Well, good morning, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started. We like to try and get off on time here so that we can end on time. So yes, Rebecca, if you don't mind starting our slideshow here. I wanted to welcome everyone. Actually, before you start the slideshow, let me first introduce our team. I know some of you are new to our A.D.A.P.T community meetings, and I'd like you to meet everyone. But also we have two new board members, and I'd like to give them the opportunity to say hi and tell you a little bit about themselves and perhaps what drew them to join the A.D.A.P.T board. I mean, what on earth were you thinking? You know, not everyone has the time to spend for these organizations, so we really appreciate your being here. So probably up in the top of your screen somewhere, you'll see Tom Pressing, our president. Tom, say hi and wave.
Good morning, everyone.
We also have Jean Jensen, who puts together a lot of the stuff for us. I think her title is still Director at Large.
No, yeah. Outreach. No, she's Outreach Director.
Outreach Director, that's what it is. So Jean takes care of reaching out to the community. We have Ms. Rebecca Grant, who is the czar of all things, or czarina of all things technical, and takes care of the website and a number of other things. Say hi, Rebecca.
Hi, happy Saturday. Nice to see everyone.
And we have two new board members, Tom Owen and John Mosby. You're probably familiar with both of them if you've been to our meetings, because they're some of the usual suspects that show up. But let me start with Tom Owen. Tell us who you are and why you're here.
I've been wondering that myself, Colleen. Thanks, Colleen. And great to be here, honestly. It's been probably a long time coming for me. How did I get here? I born and raised in the area, moved away, moved back, moved to San Francisco, took my first CERT class in San Francisco in the mid 90s before my wife and I moved back to Atherton. None of my kids, who are all daughters, would play radios with me, so I got my ham ticket. Figured out that if something were to go south in town, then the communications would fail over to the ham side. And I then decided I wanted to do two things. One, be helpful, but also be on the same network as the responders that were going to be offering help, should I need it more than anything else. So that got me very involved in ham, which got me involved in CERT, which I took under first Carol Parker, just a love, you don't know her. And then under Mike Ralston, I got involved in the CERT CCM board, where I served as vice chairman with Mr. Pressing and a few others. And somewhere way back in there, I got involved sort of on the fringes of A.D.A.P.T, and that got me to what I'm Area 8 co-coordinator with, where's my partner? She's on here somewhere. Jan McKenzie, there she is. And I'm pinch hitting as a co-block captain or block captain for area coordinator Susan Warren here in Area 7. So I've been doing a lot of this stuff, and it's great that I can now sort of share this with the A.D.A.P.T board. Professionally, I've been with a bunch of startups and whatnot, and most recently in the drone space. And part of that has me working with the Menlo Park Fire Department, helping manage and run their drone program, which is a fantastic resource that the district has, for us. And I see it from the other side. My business is working with public agencies across the country, helping them set up and manage and create safe programs. So that works very, very well. And it's great to see that sort of asset here in an emergency response scenario. Lastly, I'm a big fan of our police department. I think the chief is on, and I remember when Brian was a trainee under FTO Brad Mills, if I recall. Still the Prince of Darkness, huh, Brian? So I love this community. I think that one of the challenges we have with long driveways and gates is that we don't have as much of a community feel as I think we could or should. And that's socially, I'll leave that to my neighbors to make up their own minds. But I think if and when something happens, it's best to be prepared for what could happen and be able to be helpful should you have the capacity to do that. So obviously we want to take care of ourselves and then take care of our family. But if you can take care of your neighbors, then great. And if you can lend a hand in the community, which we all think we can, then I think that's fantastic. So to be a part of the board that Mr. Pressing and Colleen and Jeannie and Rebecca and others have, and the folks that have preceded you, Scott Barnum and others, is an honor for me to sort of take my willingness to help in the community to this level.
Thank you very much, Tom, and welcome to the board. John Mosby, I know you're out there, but I've lost your, there you are. It's this Hollywood Squares format of Zoom is always a challenge. So John, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have about 30 years in electronic communications was my career. When I tried to retire, I got into disaster preparedness. I was the executive director for San Mateo County CARD, which was an organization that trained nonprofit and faith-based organizations how to prepare for a disaster, how to write a disaster plan, prepare for a disaster, see the disaster through so that, for example, Second Harvest Food Bank was one of our clients, and they need to stay operational before, during, and after a disaster. So we had classes and workshops on how to do that. And it was part of a very wide, CARD was part of a very wide organization at the time. Most of you know I'm also the Aries Emergency Coordinator for Atherton, East Palo Alto, and Menlo Park, which I'm trying to change that system a little bit so that each city has their own emergency coordinator, like the rest of the county. I'm the volunteer coordinator for BlackBerry React, which is an emergency communications team of volunteers based out of Mountain View. So we cover both counties, Santa Clara County and San Mateo County. And I have been a certified disaster instructor since the very early 90s. When I was the director of CARD, that was a training organization. And I've been certified by FEMA as a, or Homeland Security, as a CERT instructor and program manager. And I've been a member of the A.D.A.P.T community, gosh, 15 years. Mm-hmm. How I started going to the meetings shortly after I heard about it when Scott was running it. That was a long time ago, and have always been interested in A.D.A.P.T because it's on the cutting edge in the area, and I have learned a great deal being with A.D.A.P.T and have grown a lot.
Well, thank you, John. I recommend anyone who has any interest in ham radios. I think there is some interest out there that we learned more about in our community meeting, which I'm sure Tom will talk about later. But if you're interested in ham radios or that type of thing, John is probably your best person, and Tom Owen would be, you know, not too far afield. And certainly if you're interested in drones, Tom's your guy there. So, all right. Well, we'll get on with our agenda. Welcome, John. Welcome, Tom. Thank you for joining us. For anyone else who may be interested in serving on the board of directors, we are able, I think, to grow up to, I think our bylaws say 7. So there is room if you want to have some fun with us.
One more.
One more. So yes. I'm always looking for interested people that can help us out with we try to maximize our skill sets. So the things that I'm good at, as few as they are, maybe they complement someone else's skills in another area. So we won't be trying to make anyone do things that are outside of their wheelhouse, but we do find that we have a lot of complementary efforts. So consider joining us. And if you have any interest, feel free to tap any of the board members and ask, you know, how's that going and how's that working? We'll be happy to talk with you about it. All right, so our meeting agenda today, we just disposed with our welcome and introductions. We'll have an update from the police department, and Tom will also give us an update on where things are with A.D.A.P.T. Then we'll move into our, what we call our training segment. Today's topic will be what to do when disaster strikes. We've all done some prep work, you know, how do you prepare? What do I need to keep on hand, etc. But when disaster strikes, now what? And that's what our topic today is going to be. It's quite likely that you'll be at home given COVID, and we're all not getting out as much as we used to. But bear in mind when we're going through this chat, you may be at the grocery store, you may be at work, you may be someplace else. You may have kids in school, or they may be someplace else. So it's always good to think about these scenarios in terms of where you might be when disaster happens, because we certainly never know. Of course, afterwards, we'll have lots of Q&A, and then we'll wrap up on time. Today, we're going to try something a little bit different. We will conclude our normal meeting on time because that is sort of our agreement with you. You choose to attend. We don't want to abuse your time, but we will leave Zoom open after the meeting has concluded so that anyone who might wish to chat with neighbors or with one of your board members, we will be available at that time for informal conversation as well. So feel free to stay on if you have any questions after the meeting is concluded. All right, with that, the proclamation. Atherton was really kind to us once again and recognized us with a proclamation. Tom, do you want to talk a little bit about that for us?
Thank you, Colleen. Yes, we received a very gracious proclamation from the town of Atherton recognizing our 81-day deployment for COVID. That was spearheaded by our chief, Steve McCulley, and the 78 volunteers who went throughout the community for our 7,200 residents and 2,500 homes. We had 3 911 calls. We had 8 necessary involvement situations where with the police, we helped people out. It was a tremendous effort over 81 days. We're only one of 3 organizations that actually deployed in Northern California, ourselves, Palo Alto, and Morgan Hill. And the interesting thing is during the 81 days, the COVID case rate remained at 13 for all 81 days of our deployment. So this proclamation is a recognition to all of you, all of us, and the chief who were out there keeping our community safe. And I thank the town council and George Rodrigues, and again, Chief McCulley, and all of you for making that happen.
Thank you very much. I don't know if we have a slide for it, but what I'd like to do is also invite it's Sergeant Robbins these days, I believe. There we go. There's the slide. Would you like to give us an update? I don't know if Chief McCulley is with us this morning.
I believe Chief was on. Chief, if you'd like me to defer to you, I can do that.
I am on if you can hear me.
We can hear you, Chief. Thanks.
Oh, great. Yeah, and then we'll have, I don't want to step on Brian's toes. He can speak for himself, but just a couple comments. Welcome, everybody. Chief McCulley, Atherton Police. And yes, the proclamation, as you all know, speaks volumes for what you all have done this last year. It's been a very challenging year. From the police department, sad to report that Joe Wade will be retiring. His last day is the last day of January. He's been an outstanding member of the police department. I couldn't have asked for a better partner, but we've done some great succession planning, and I'm happy to report that we're going to be promoting his replacement from within, Sergeant Dan Larson, and he's already attending all the different meetings, and you're going to find him just as supportive and positive as Joe Wade. So I'm looking forward to that relationship. So as I said, this last year's been very challenging. I think what it did tell us all is the importance of communication and coordination, and I think the outstanding work you've done with area coordinators and block coordinators, and welcome to Tom and John. I got a chance to speak with Tom about the drone program. They're a big partner for the police department. As you all know, it's very sensitive for a police department to have a drone program, and so we lean on the fire department, which will work well for us, and it will work very well for A.D.A.P.T. So again, I look forward to working with all of you, and I'll be on the board meeting next week, as I know that Tom and the board are developing the plan for 2021, which will just keep getting better. So with that, I wish you all a good morning. I'll let Brian make a few comments, and have a good and productive meeting.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, Chief. So just a couple of just seasonal things. As we know, time change just recently happened. So be aware that it is getting darker sooner, and in our town, as opposed to other towns, much, much darker. So make sure you have your outdoor lighting on to help deter any burglars and such when they are rolling through town, of picking your house as a target. Secure your windows, secure your doors. The other night we had, now that we're getting a little more the wintry weather, fall weather, high winds, which are setting off alarms. At some points, actually pushing doors open that aren't necessarily fully secured. So just be aware of that kind of stuff. As well, another update, November 17th, the town will be having a flock cameras. They're stationary ALPR cameras that will be up, being installed come November 17th. There'll be 19 total cameras. There is going to be a program for residents to be able to purchase cameras for their own street if they'd like to increase the number in town. Extremely beneficial stuff, very secure. When it comes to us on an investigation standpoint, a lot of times if you don't have a car or some kind of description of something, the ability to catch someone becomes very difficult, because most of the people who come into town are just passer-throughs. Unfortunately, our residents are, well, not unfortunately, but for us, our residents aren't criminals. So we're not going to find them walking around town and such. So having a tool like this is going to really benefit just the community in general. So if you are interested, I believe come the holiday update meeting, we'll have a little bit more details on what you guys can do if you're interested on purchasing one for your street. They are relatively inexpensive as what you would assume. But there is a little contract you'll just agree to giving us access to that digital footage that comes in if and when we need to look at it. Like I said, it's secure. Only reason an officer can actually search it would be for investigative purposes only, and they have to provide that reason when they review it. So other than that, another other thing to think of, the high rain that's going to be coming, around the house, guys, just take a look at the trees. We all know how the heritage oaks can get very, very heavy. And so, if anything looks like it's going to be an issue, take whatever measures you need to mitigate that. Reach out to Sally, our arborist, for her recommendation and such like that. Hopefully avoid, trees coming down the house, coming down the roadway, blocking your driveway.
Brian, we have a question about manufacturer and who's going to mount those. Can individuals contact you directly to get that information?
Yeah, so we'll have a whole thing put together. The company is called Flock. They are pole-mounted cameras, so they would be mounted on a particular part on the street. They are solar powered. For the most part, is what we try to do. We don't really want to hook them up to direct power. But they wouldn't be mounted anywhere on the property, but just all along the easement, which would be the best access for reading of vehicles going to and from. But we will have more details on that once, of course, we get them all up. And we'll have a whole little thing put together for the next holiday town meeting update.
Okay. And in the interim, they can get a hold of B. Robbins at the city, right?
Yes.
Thank you, Brian.
Mhm.
Oh, Colleen is muted. I think she's talking.
Thank you. Yes, I was. So thank you, Brian. I appreciate the update on the cameras. I know that a lot of folks do have private cameras as well hooked into alarm systems. And I suspect when needed, you ask residents about that as well. And so, all right, we will move forward. Tom, you're up again.
Okie doke. I am really, really excited. We just had our first area coordinator advanced training meeting this past week. And it's an initiative that was brought to us by our area coordinators, neighborhood and block coordinators, saying they would like more training, more advanced training than what we're offering on Saturday mornings. And we had a fantastic roundtable of conversation. With that in mind, our initiatives that are rolling over from 2020 to 2021 will include a new trailer for far west Atherton is what I call it. That is the area on the other side of Alameda de los Pogos, filling the one hole we have in our community response. A medical trailer for the central area that will service the entire community. Jerry Lugers and his logistics team are really working at getting our trailers up really in uniformity and in really a good place so that when a disaster does happen, we have equipment available to us. Paul Jamilian and Barbara Kostick are working with the medical team to grow our medical capability and training. We're working to, as John mentioned, to dramatically increase our communications capability in 2021. We want to continue to grow the EAPs throughout the community. We now have an EAP in every area, but we want to now have multiple EAPs. We want to continue to develop the website with our website resource library, and thank you for Rebecca for taking that on. We are going to be upgrading our Saturday morning meeting training. One of those changes will be is we're looking at having joint police and A.D.A.P.T presentations throughout 2021, and really taking advantage of our police department's knowledge to be blended with A.D.A.P.T's knowledge. We're having the advanced classes with the area coordinators and neighborhood and block coordinators, and anyone can join that. Just let Rebecca or Jeannie know that you want to join that meeting, which we hope to be once a month for about an hour, 15 minutes or so, maybe hour and a half maximum, so that you can get the knowledge you want, so that when a time comes, then you can maybe step up as a block, area, or neighborhood coordinator. We are definitely committed to developing the class in a box product or application, which would include a PowerPoint presentation, audio, video monitoring, class notes, handouts to be given to our area coordinators so they can actually teach the classes themselves. And we would have it on the website so you as an individual can download it. So we're very excited about that. Those are just some of the initiatives that we're rolling over from 2020. As the chief pointed out, we're having a board meeting on Saturday next, and we're going to delineate our goals and then report back to you, our membership, as to what we'd like to do, how we'd like to do it, and to elicit your participation as much as possible. In the meantime, we grow by you getting to know more your neighbors. understanding that disasters level everyone. So it doesn't matter whether you're behind a fence or not. It doesn't matter your income status. Disasters level everyone. And so a group participation in disaster recovery is the only way you're going to make it. Individuals do not do well by themselves in disasters. And the last thing is notifications. Please sign up for SMC Alert. It's very, very important now that we know the number of things that have been going on. Sign up for the police department's flash alert. And then when things happen, as you know, A.D.A.P.T gives you notifications. So we notified you in conjunction with the police department for COVID-19 and deployed. We let you know about the smoke and shelter in place situation in conjunction with the police department. And then for the West Atherton power outage, we notified the community about that potential too in conjunction with the police department. So we're starting to get very, very robust in our ability to communicate with you, but that requires you to also get on SMC Alert and the police flash system. That's what I have for now.
Great, thank you, Tom. Everyone, if you go to the chat function at the very bottom of the screen, you will see that there's just a little bubble there with chat on it. If you go to that location, you will see that Jeannie has put a few links in there for us. The first link is the flock safety cameras that Sergeant Robbins was mentioning earlier. Those cameras have a ballpark cost of around $2,000 if you want one in your front yard. And I suspect the police also have a map of where they have planned cameras so you can see if one is needed. Also, Jeannie did put in there a link to our localized emergency updates via text or email. So you can see that link in there to sign up as well. All right, now we'll move on to our main topic for the day, what to do when disaster strikes. So Tom is going to talk to us about some of the top 10 things we should be concerned with as we prepare. We've been preparing, of course. You all have your earthquake kits. But what occurs to me, having an elderly parent who lives with me and a husband who works very hard, often in distant locations, is what happens when this disaster strikes. In a normal non-COVID time, I would be at San Jose State where I work during the normal work week and often for special events there. So what happens if I'm at work? What happens if I'm at home? What if my dad is here, but nobody else is here? He's a spry 92, but is not ready to go, let's say, racing down the street to the local EAP. So how do we deal with these things? Tom, why don't you give us your list and we can all bring up our questions as you go along. Feel free, if you like to put a question in the chat, I will be monitoring that as well.
Okie doke. So our title today is What to Do When Disaster Strikes. Before disaster, again, we've spent a lot of time planning and preparing. Just a real quick review, what do you plan for? Depending on where you live in Atherton, some of this real quick list is not going to apply to you. It will apply to most of you, however. Obviously, earthquake, tree fall, especially those of you in high canopy areas. Obviously now pandemic for everyone, which is ongoing. Power outage, which is what we were able to send out a notification 2 weeks ago to West Atherton because we were notified that PG&E was going to shut West Atherton down for 3 days. They ended up not doing it, but we got the communication out from A.D.A.P.T and the police department. What to do for that? Something new, which I think is going to be repetitive, is going to be smoke and air contamination. What do you do in terms of sheltering in place? What do you have on hand to keep your lungs clear? Evacuation routes from your home, evacuation routes out of the Atherton area locations. Those are things you have to plan for. You sit down, you close your eyes, you imagine those scenarios, and you make a plan. Some of the preparation involved in that includes a bug out bag, which we've talked about, keeping your vehicle gas tank 3/4 full, have alternative power sources, solar generator and batteries. And we in the fire district at a certain level, as well as A.D.A.P.T, are encouraging you to use lithium ion batteries as much as you can. They cost a little bit more, but they last better and are more heat tolerant. Have alternative lighting with batteries, have a spare propane tank for your barbecue, be able to camp out in your backyard for 7 days, have a fire extinguisher in your garage, your master bedroom, your kitchen, and your emergency storage unit. So that's a minimum of 4, and test them. Have a medical kit in your garage, your kitchen, and your storage unit. Know how to do fire extinguishing other than extinguishers, either via the hose from domestic water, or those of you who have pools, how to use a pump and hose apparatus. And knowing that the key things for many of these are having a pair of surgical gloves underneath work gloves, face masks, goggles, and then boost oxygen to keep yourself healthy.
May I make one comment, Tom?
Yes.
Don't test your fire extinguisher. Check the gauge on your fire extinguisher regularly. Please don't test it.
Why not? Why not, John?
Because you will discharge it, and it will, the rest of the pressure will then leak off, because the powder will not allow the extinguisher to reseal itself.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you, John. So that's amended. This is why we have this community meeting. So we now know that, and I did not know that. I have tested mine, and now I'm not going to, because I just purchased 4 new ones, as a matter of fact. So that it turns out they don't reseal correctly if you test them. So thank you, John, for that. And I do watch my gauges. I found a place in Redwood City on El Camino that does recharge extinguishers. So matter of fact, I took my old 4 up there to get them recharged, and found out that they were so out of date there, weren't able to be recharged. So I went over to Ace Hardware and got new ones.
May I interrupt here as well? Yeah. I recently had a kitchen fire where I had the opportunity to use my fire extinguisher to much success. Fortunately, no damage to the house. It was an appliance that imploded. But what I learned in taking my fire extinguisher to our fire department to ask about getting it recharged is only commercial level fire extinguishers are rechargeable. Those that we buy for our homes are disposables. So keep that in mind. If you have an industrial extinguisher, probably rechargeable, get it checked. But if you have the kind that, I bought mine at Costco, and it was great, it worked brilliantly, but not rechargeable. So.
Correct.
Very good. And the location is 1736 El Camino in Redwood City. I'm purchasing 4 additional refurbished extinguishers from them to complement the 4 brand new ones I just bought. So again, fire extinguishers are critical. There are some Halon products out there, so look that up. But the traditional ABC fire extinguisher works in all scenarios.
Is that Garbrith extinguisher?
Yes.
Yeah. They've been around a long, long time.
Nice folks, really nice folks. So
used to be a competitor of mine.
Okay. Yeah, 1736 El Camino.
There's a question in chat, Tom, that's relevant. What about fire blankets? You see these sometimes in commercial kitchens. I wouldn't know where to purchase one, maybe your place on El Camino. What do you think about those? Are they effective? What do you think?
I have heard both yes and no in terms of their effectiveness. I suppose the best way, I don't know if they're they should be reusable. The best way to test it is, you know, start a little fire in your barbecue pit and throw a blanket on it and see how it works. But I have no firsthand testing of the blankets. The best thing to do is do your homework and do your research and report back to us what you think is best. Just like the Doctors Warren went out and investigated pool pumps and hoses and found a company in Florida was able to give A.D.A.P.T a really good deal on, and then I went over there for their demonstration of their unit. So some of this is going to require our A.D.A.P.T members to go out and research for us and then come back to it. It's a novel idea, you know, especially if someone is caught on fire and they're rolling around, you throw the blanket on them, but I have no specific information about that.
I know a couple places to get them. I'll pass it on to the board to do whatever they want to do with it. And I look at fire blankets like I look at radios. CB still works in this area, and it's a viable option. As you know, for FRS, GMRS, MERS, amateur, whatever you have in your garage is better than nothing.
Yeah,
So,
a regular blanket thrown on somebody who's caught on fire,
yes,
and stomping it will work. So again,
yep.
It might be just a cheaper solution to have a couple of, you know, big heavy wool blankets around that can do the trick.
I do not disagree.
So I will offer this. I don't have experience with the blankets. I think it's you know, obviously used for suppressing the fire, whether that's a person rolling around on the floor or primarily what I've seen them as a kitchen fire, right? Grease fire over the stove, and you take the large blanket, put it over the top, and it effectively smothers it. I don't have experience with it. I'm happy to ask around within the fire district and see if I can get some sort of consensus. And once I do, I will get that to Jeannie and Colleen, and we can get it posted and talk about it in the following meeting.
That would be great, Tom. That way we can update because that's one of the things we've been really good at is finding out information and making sure at the next community meeting we have that updated information. Thank you, Tom.
Sure.
Tom Pressing, I think I got you off track with that, but feel free to continue where you were going.
Okay, so after a disaster, as Tom Owen has pointed out, and we have all, you know, talked about over and over again, but it bears repeating, you take care of yourself first. Because if you can't take care of yourself, you can't help your family. Then you take care of your family, and once your family is taken care of, you take care of your neighbors, because disasters are the leveler, and it is foolhardy to believe you can survive a disaster, a large-scale disaster by yourself. You're going to need your family and your community to assist. And as soon as you get that frame of reference that you go yourself, your family, and your neighbors, the quicker you're going to be more successful and effective in responding. So what happens if there's a disaster? Get safe immediately. So what does that mean? Well, duck and cover, and we'll have another slide coming up, but immediately already have a mindset that you know what you're going to do. So that means always having what's called situational awareness, no matter where you are, home, you know, Costco, the movie theater, whatever. Next, as soon as you have made yourself safe, you check your personal health condition. You check for bleeding, you check for blurry eyes, you make sure that you can stand up and walk, that kind of thing. If it's at night or even in the daytime, especially with an earthquake and at night, you put on clothing that you know will last 24 hours, that once you put it on, it may be 24 hours before you get to recycle that clothing. So make sure it is capable of dealing with various weather conditions, and then relocate to an even safer location. So what do you do in an earthquake? You drop, cover, hold. It's interesting. That almost looks like a bunny rabbit there, but when I saw this first. Anyway, so hold. If you're using a wheelchair, lock the wheelchair. If you're using a walker, lock it until you're ready to make your move. If you're in your car, pull over, stop, set your parking brake, make sure, and I would keep the engine on so that you can make sure you have power to the vehicle, as well as if there's an opportunity to make an exit, you can. Remember to take the parking brake off. If you're in bed, put your face down, cover your head and neck as best you can as the situation is going on. If you're outdoors, stay away from buildings. If you're inside and it's safe, then you would stay inside. But if it's not, then as you exit, make sure you avoid, overhangs. You're looking for glass. The instinct is not to look up, but do look up to make sure as you're exiting, your situation is safe. Avoid doorways if you can. And most important thing in an earthquake, as I constantly remind you, is aftershocks, aftershocks, and aftershocks. The last big quake in Alaska, as you know, the 7.3, was followed by 6 5+ aftershocks. The largest one was 5.9. Each of those is a big earthquake all by itself. They were aftershocks. So if something is stable after the first quake, be aware that there'll be multiple aftershocks, usually a minimum of 3, which can destabilize the environment around you. Do call 911. And the reason is that get yourself on the list so that when police and fire are able to deploy, which will be sometime between 5 and 7 days, that you're on the list and they can prioritize and get you help as much as possible. And that's for any situation. Call 911, earthquake, whatever. For a home fire, obviously call 911. Stay low. Check the door temperature with the back of your hand because you do not want to harm the palms. You can burn the back of your hand and still grab things, but if you burn your palms, you will not be able to move around effectively or assist others. Evacuate quickly and do not re-enter. And remember, if you do catch on fire, for whatever reason, stop, drop, and roll. It does work. It actually works. Now, for a power outage.
I just want to confirm, can everyone see the screen? The screen sharing is working?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, great.
Perfect. Let's see. Well, we'll deal with the questions on chat when we're done here. So when you have a power outage, which we were warned that we were going to have a 3-day power outage in West Atherton, it didn't happen, but we were told it was going to. When that does happen, keep your freezers and refrigerators closed. They will last about 48 hours if you do that. If you're going to open the refrigerators, intend to use the contents up, especially if you know the power outage is going to last longer than 24 hours. Have a generator, have the appropriate gas in an appropriate container. I recommend a jerry can that is metal. The generator is always used outdoors and not indoors and away from windows. And then when there's a power outage, it is not advisable to use a gas stove or an oven to heat your home. A lot of the ovens and gas stoves have electric igniters, so they may not even work at all. So turning that on means you're potentially creating a gas situation. Disconnect your appliances and electronics to avoid damage from electrical surges. Have alternate plans for refrigerating medicines or using power-dependent medical devices. So that would be solar panels with a a battery or a Tesla wall is another one of those devices, or a generator or something akin to that. And if safe, go to an alternate location for heating and cooling. So, oh, there's Norma and Earl. So, in taking care of your family, if you're not evacuating, and frankly, the likelihood of evacuation is, as we have discussed at length, is going to be minimal at best, given the corridors of egress that we have. First thing you do is you assemble your family, get everybody together. And what I'm about to talk about now is you want to practice this at least twice a year and make a family event out of it, where it's kind of a fun day with the family, pretending that you have a disaster and going out to Baskin Robbins or Jeffrey's afterwards for burgers or ice cream. So you assemble your family, make sure everyone is accounted for. You perform triage and first aid immediately on your family members with your supplies on hand, which is why I would like to see you have a first aid kit in the kitchen, in one of the in the garage, and in the outdoor storage, so that you have medical equipment readily available. And you want to make sure everybody's okay, so that when you do the next step is organize and assign tasks, which you have prepared in advance so that people know in your family know what to do, they can do it. If someone is injured, you do not want to have an injured person take that task, which means when you organize and assign tasks and you have planned this in advance, you have to have the ability to blend activities. So if someone can't do one thing, an individual is able to do two things. You set up your communications, most likely in FRS, GMSR, radio net, and you test it. And you go on, let's say you go up over to Foothill Park, or you go to Holbrook Palmer Park with your, let's say you have a family of 4 with your 4 radios, and you tell 2 of the kids and to go to far locations and have your wife go to another one if you're the husband, for example. And then you start talking and you start moving around, getting used to communicating. That FRS radio is very, very important in a localized environment. We know that the distance is about 150 yards in Atherton because of all the trees, but it certainly will work on your property. But you have to test it, and you make that fun. You go out and maybe you go hiking and you use your FRS radio, or or you go to the mall and test it out there and find out how effective it is or is not. You make it fun for the kids in particular, get them used to using radios, so that when it happens, it is not an emotional jump for them. They know what to do. Because you have a radio now, you can send out a couple of individuals, and you want everybody to do 2 by 2. Again, it's the buddy system. And maybe an adult and a child goes out to recon the property, while another adult and children stay at a centralized, safe location outside of the house, especially in case of an earthquake. And you're going to check your property and pets. And what's important is, as you're checking your property to see, what are potential tree falls? What does the house look like? Does it have a slant? Is there a compromised roof? Do you smell any gas? Does it look like there's a small fire? Any of those situations, you want to have 2 people walking around, and you're checking your neighbor's property as well. So those of you who have a neighbor to the left and to the right, even though it's maybe a 1-acre property and you may have a property behind you, in that case, you're looking for tree fall and fire, or wires down, so that you are aware of what potentially could happen from the outside of your property after you have reconned your own property. let's see, you move your car into the driveway facing out, and we'll talk about why you do that in a moment. And you check with your out-of-state contact. I'm recommending that, and A.D.A.P.T recommends that you have one out-of-state contact, because the way the system is set up here in California, you will probably have 3 minutes to get a call going out. That will be easier to do than having somebody call in, because of the way the system is set up. They close down the lines so they can have essential communications from emergency responders. Have one contact out of state and have them be able to contact all the other folks that are in your family, and then you prepare to shelter. And there's John helping his pet. In terms of checking your property, you're looking for gas leaks. Turn off if there's a smell of gas or there is impending fire. This is important. So the rule of thumb is you don't turn the gas off. However, if you smell gas, you turn it off. If there is a fire next door and the wind's blowing towards your property, or you're not sure where the wind is going, but there's a fire either across the street or next door, it is prudent to, in fact, turn your gas off so that your property doesn't become an incendiary complement to the fire next door. If there is a fire, if you can do it safely, try to extinguish it with a fire extinguisher, a garden hose, or your pool pump. If it looks like you cannot do it, then you're evacuating away from the property. Water leaks, it's important to identify those to the best of your ability, find out where they're coming from. If you have water leaks, you go to the street and turn off your input water. So all of you have Cal Water has a gauge, or whatever your water company is. And you can pop the cement container and turn it off the same way you turn off the gas at your house. The reason why you want to turn off gas leaks because they become a potential for electrocution. And if you slip, you get hurt. Down power lines, both on your property, on the 3 properties that are surrounding you, the one behind to the left and right, and the one property across the street. Structural damage, you're looking for any kind of slant in a structure, a damaged roof, or unstable trees. So that's very important to, that are near the home, because aftershocks are going to change the condition of your home. Remember, aftershocks, aftershocks, aftershocks. Then the next thing we're going to do is, once you have stabilized your family and you have prepared yourself to camp out for 7 days. So in that previous slide where it says to shelter, that's going to your cache in the backyard, your emergency preparation shed, and you get ready to camp out. The most important thing in camping out, before we get to your neighbors, is to set up shelter. So, remember, a 4-person tent holds 2 people. Setting up tents that in an area that is safe, securing your first aid equipment and your water in that order. So shelter, first aid, water, and then you start pulling out all of the other equipment that you're going to need for an extended stay. Then you go help your neighbors. So most likely you're going to check on the neighbor to the right and to the left and the neighbor across the street. And you're going to look up and down the street and evaluate the neighborhood. Depending on where your EAP is, you report to it. Now, if there is no EAP, then set one up. In other words, we have 14 EAPs in the community. However, we have many, many, many neighborhoods in the community. So if there is no EAP, my recommendation to you is set one up in front of your house. Now, I have received communication from Athertonians that they really don't want an EAP in front of their house. And I go, okay, I can understand that, I guess from a privacy issue, but in a disaster sense, disasters level everything to a common denominator. I would want my EAP in front of my house, because then I have all kinds of people available to me at my EAP to not only assist the neighborhood I'm in, but to keep my home safe. So think about that in terms of an EAP. Again, if you'd like an EAP in front of your house, it goes on the Atherton easement, does not go on your property. And Atherton, we have in our budget that for EAP signage, and Atherton will install it. You just get your permission and you have an EAP. To set up your EAP, you organize all the various response teams that you're going to need. First of all, you assemble, someone's in charge, that's called an incident commander, and the first thing, or IC. And the first thing you do is assign a scribe, so that you're immediately starting to record everything, because you're going to need that as you continue to communicate in outward concentric circles to larger groups of people, so that you remember what's going on. In disasters, things are chaos, and those situations need to be recorded. Organize your teams, set up communications, and set up the roles within that communications unit. Usually it's about 2 people. You have a scribe for communications and a communicator. You set up your network, which will be a combination of FRS radios out to about 150 yards, and ham radio if you have ham radio operators in your neighborhood. The very next thing you do is, once you get everybody settled, now as people are coming into the EAP, they're reporting in the conditions of the neighborhood, which is why you have that initial scribe. You send teams out 2 by 2 to do a complete reconnaissance of the neighborhood, so that on an individual basis in your backyard, or a group basis in the middle of the street, or actually to the side of the street, because you want to keep the middle clear for emergency vehicles, you're going to be able to effectively and safely and successfully shelter in place. In other words, what happens if a number of homes are completely compromised? Well, you're going to have to set up, a camp out in front of people's houses or on the street, and you want to know where the safest places to do that are. You set up ongoing
Question,
traffic.
Tom,
Yes, ma'am.
about what you were just talking about. Is it required that a resident go to the EAP once they're safe, or can they stay safe with their little pod of neighbors and not?
They don't have. They do not have to go to the EAP. The EAP is, so for example, because we currently only have 14 of them, the EAP may be too far away, for example. So you stay with your little pod, and then the pod creates its own little EAP. So actually, in essence, the fact that you created a pod, you've created your own mini EAP, and you apply the same. Yeah, and that's a good question. You apply the same principles in the formal EAPs. The same organization works for the pod. So the more pods, probably the better, and it'll be more effective in terms of survivability. Let's see. Oh,
We're at 10, so we have almost start to question Q&A soon.
Okay, I'll be almost done. Set up traffic and crowd control, very important. Keep track of kids, keep track of adults, control the traffic, and prepare, whether it's as a group or as individuals, to shelter for 7 days. Let's see. So in summary, take care of yourself first, very important. Make sure your health is okay. Take care of your family, make sure their health is okay immediately, relocate them to a safer place, and then be ready to shelter in place, or to shelter in place or at an EAP for 7 days. By the way, you can use your vehicle as a shelter because it provides security, power, and fuel. Disaster response success is based on planning ahead and having supplies in place and neighbors working together.
Very good. Thank you, Tom. We now have plenty of time for Q&A. I'll start us off. If you want to ask a question, feel free just to speak up. If you are a little shy and prefer to put it in chat, Jeannie and I are monitoring the chat for you, so go ahead and do that. So my question is, because I do have my 92-year-old father with me, and he is maybe not able to make it to our nearest EAP. Give me some ideas of what I should be thinking about to prepare. What special needs might I be thinking about for someone who's elderly, or maybe someone who has some disabilities that they're dealing with? What types of things should I be thinking about?
Okay, so we'll start from the outer ring in. Let's say both Colleen and her husband are not at home when the earthquake happens. Colleen's at San Jose State, her husband's at work. And what's your dad's first name?
Bob.
And Bob's at home alone, okay? So in that scenario, in advance, there is a way to communicate. You have a plan where the first thing that's going to happen is either Bob is going to try to call you, because there's going to be a greater probability for him to get a call to you than you getting a call into him. But either way, the plan is set up whether you're going to call him, or he's going to call you, and you try to establish immediate communication for immediate direction, because even with planning, situations change. The second thing is, especially in a home alone situation, is that Bob has practiced with Colleen and I forgot your husband's first name. Steve, where to go. So they take him to where to go, that he knows where on the property that they're on, that he knows where to go. Is he in a wheelchair or a walker, or can he walk?
No, he can walk, just not well.
Okay. So does he use a cane by any chance?
He uses a cane, and I think he's a little too proud for that walker.
Okay, great. So that he is reminded to use the cane, especially and the way you help him with the situation with the walker is that an earthquake makes a cane not a viable way of holding him up, but a walker will, because it has 4 points of contact and stabilization, and there are aftershocks. He goes to the part of the property that is best suited, and he then waits. Now, who does he wait for? Well, that Colleen and Steve will have set up a communication, most likely with one of three neighbors, to the left, to the right, or across the street. The reason is anyone besides those three neighbors is going to be completely tied up with their own situation and might be too far away, especially if there's tree fall. So you want to have the three neighbors that you have intimately involved with checking in when you're not home. If you have an FRS radio, you could actually set up a mini net to the neighbors to the right and left and across the street, so that Bob can get on the FRS radio and chat with them. He's going to a place where you have some kind of covering, well, that's safe, and if not, then but near to some kind of resources that can at least keep him warm. So Bob has to be told that as he's going out the door, at least grab a jacket if he's by himself, that kind of thing. Then Colleen and Steve will have the telephone numbers of the neighbors to the right, the left, across the street to check in with them, trying to get a hold of them as quickly as possible. The walker, the reason how you can sell a walker to an individual who's too proud is that you explain to them that an earthquake makes a cane not a good device to hold you up. In an earthquake, people get knocked down who are fully functional, but a walker will make sure that you are okay. If your elderly person is in a wheelchair, then you actually practice with them to wheel themselves out to a safe area on your property. And then depending on how long you think it's going to take to assist that individual is how you set up your support system. And FRS radios to your neighbors that Bob can use will be effective in that regard. Does that help there, Colleen?
It does. Thank you very much. We have a question in chat from Adam. This question is probably best addressed to John. John, do you have a link for some good quality FRS radios? And if you do, Jeannie will be happy to throw those in the chat.
Rachel and I are reviewing FRS radios because the one that was most popular a couple of years ago has been discontinued by the manufacturer. So I will get with Rachel and I will put it on the, get it back to the board to put on the website.
And I can tell you that John knows that I have been bugging him via email, because I even called Ham Radio Outlet, which is what has been my go-to place for radio equipment. Used to be here in Mountain View, they're in Oakland. And their radio expert couldn't tell me what a good FRS radio replacement was for the MR355R Motorola. So we are counting on John, you, and Rachel to try to get us that recommendation, because A.D.A.P.T would like to standardize its FRS radio capability. And I'm the secretary of MPC Ready, and we'd like to do the same. So I'm going to strongly encourage you and Rachel to try to find that for us as quickly as possible.
Yes, dear.
Thank you. You're welcome, dear.
All right, that's all of the questions in chat. Are there any folks who want to chime in?
Colleen, I'd like to chime in.
Sure.
I'm fielding some questions about the camera, so I'd like to just answer a couple of clarifying questions in case there's anybody else who may have had the same questions.
Thank you, Brian.
So the cameras, a purchase of the camera is not a camera for you to visually see. Due to the fact that the nature of a license plate reader camera is to capture the image of the license plate in order to give us information about the registered owner of the vehicle and such. That information is usually considered sensitive material, and so it would only be housed at the company's servers, and only the police department would have access to it. So that's one of the questions right there. And currently, as I said, there are only 16 cameras, 19 with one of the residents who've already decided to purchase 3 for his street. They are strategically placed at ingress and egress points, not necessarily directly in the middle of a street. But due to the fact of budgetary constraints, we were only able to purchase 16. And so I could say if someone asked about Lindenwood, and I was only able to say we only have 2 cameras, and you know, there are many more points than just 2 spots for anyone to get in and out of Lindenwood, as opposed to the same as Central Atherton or West Atherton. And so hopefully eventually too, although this hasn't been discussed yet, this program can be expanded in the future. But the one opportunity that we are bringing to help out if residents want to, you know, we always talk about community policing working together and purchasing of their own so that they can get that started earlier before the budget is reviewed, and then we're able to purchase a couple more and so on and so forth. But just to clarify those aspects right there, as much as I'd love for you guys to be able to look at every car that goes through town, we would not be allowed to let you do that.
Well, it seems a little tedious anyway, Brian. So thank you for taking on the role of having to look at those things for us. Are there
Real quick comment?
Yes.
It's not a question, but since we had such a fruitful conversation, if you guys want to put your email address in the chat, we'll be happy to send you a summary of this presentation and recording after the meeting's done. I got a few of your emails already.
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. We are now Rebecca's along with Jeannie are putting together the package that goes out to all of you who send us your email so that you can get information that, you know, we have to communicate this very quickly so you can get the information that you want to have as an effective follow-up. So we're really pleased to do that.
All right. Do we have other questions? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to close our meeting since we like to end on time. One thing that we did want to announce, the board normally has a holiday party around this time of year, or starts to schedule one. If you were with us the last few years, we've had those at Holbrook Palmer Park, which has been delightful, and we've had a lot of resources donated by the Atherton Police, which makes for a very merry time, so we do appreciate that. This year, of course, we're really not able to gather in the traditional way. So what we are planning is that our December meeting will be a little less business-like and a little more festive. We'll plan to celebrate some of the things that have happened this year and some of the individuals who have done some outstanding work. And we'll keep it casual. I encourage you all to bring your favorite holiday morning beverage, because we will have the morning meeting. So might not be appropriate to have that spiked eggnog at 9 a.m., but I will leave that to you to decide. So hopefully you will all be able to join us next month for that meeting, and you will be getting a meeting announcement through email as usual. Any last questions that we should take care of? Jan, did I see your hand go up? No? Okay. Anyone else? Joan, you're on mute. There you go.
This is for Brian, not totally related, but is the police department going to have a barrel for collecting toys this year? And is there going to be a fund for the shop with the cop?
You know, for the barrel, I'm not sure, as we're still kind of working with Selby Lane School to find out what they are going to be doing. I have to reach out to SRO McDonald to find out the exact nature, what if and when it's going to happen. And once again, the same with Shop with the Cop, just do all the COVID restrictions. I don't necessarily know if we're going to do that. But I can definitely just look into that, talk to Chief and our SRO who usually spearhead that stuff, and get back to you guys. I can send an email out to the board who can kick it out to all that information out to you guys.
Yeah, or maybe Anthony could include it in one of his weekly newsletters.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, Mr. Stuber. Yeah, I can definitely have. I can forward it to Anthony as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right. Any other questions? All right. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up.